Greetings, everyone, to East Meets West. It's a Vice. Today, the 22nd of May, will be the last in the spring uh, season for East Meets West. And today, Eric and Al are going to be sharing some tools and, well, talking about their tools. Now, let me pull Eric into the mix here. And I'm also going to pull in Dick Shaw because he's going to be with Eric for a little bit, even though we'll spotlight Eric down the road. Have a three-way going here. And Eric, you might kind of explain what we're going to have going here as I get things set up.
Sure. My friend Dick Shaw over the years he's not only introduced me to the Sable River in Michigan and the Pere Marquette, and we've done a lot of fishing together. But Dick is a wonderful fly tyer and a fine fly fisherman as well, and has done it all. I would say in both arenas. But he's a great woodworker in addition. And he has given most of the tools that you will see that I'm going to show here. Dick has given me versions of. And Dick, if you're ready, I'll put up the first tool.
Let's verify Dick's audio before we go any further.
I can hear you and see you.
Okay, good.
Good start.
We got you. All right.
You're on, Eric.
All right. There's our first.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank Eric and Al for inviting me to share some show and tell regarding some fly tying tools. I can assure you, I don't consider myself a tool geek by any stretch of the imagination, but like most of you, I probably have a drawer or a box full of really neat tools purchased but rarely used, other than probably once or twice. Most of them are solutions to problems you didn't even know you had. Some of what I would like to share this afternoon are original ideas, but most are simply refinements to fairly standard tools. Now I'm going to throw Eric a bit of a curve and go slightly off script with a quick story of how this fly tyer became interested in fly fishing and fly tying. I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York for the first 11 years of my life. And my mother's family was from Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I had an uncle up there that owned a family cottage on Whitmore Lake, which is about 15 miles north of Ann Arbor. And I'm quite sure that this uncle was the only fly fisherman on the lake. And back in 1952, as a 8-year-old second grader, I typically fished with worms or crickets using a cane pole and a bobber. But one evening, my uncle invited me to join him and allowed me to use his fly rod. I still have it. It was a Shakespeare bamboo rod, probably a 6-weight with an automatic reel and a silk line. And wow, that was a whole lot more fun than the way I had always fished. And maybe best of all, he also tied some of his own flies, mostly poppers and streamers. When I returned home from the summer vacation in Michigan, I decided that I too could tie flies. I didn't have anything except a few hooks, my dad's bench vise to hold the hook, and my mother's sewing thread and some red nail polish. As a second grader back in '52, I attended Maple Avenue Elementary School, which was there in Niagara Falls near the whirlpool along the lower Niagara River. And early one fall morning before school started, while I was shooting marbles out on the playground with my buddies, I noticed the school principal, Miss Johnson, walking along the sidewalk on her way to school too. She was a spinster, clearly looked old to all of us. And most of the kids were simply afraid of her. I immediately noticed that she was wearing a pretty spiffy hat for an old spinster. It was sort of an Australian wide brim style that had one side turned up. And on that side that was turned up, there were about a half a dozen pheasant tail fibers that had been dyed purple. I am amazed to this day that somehow I managed the courage to approach her, but I did, and explain that I was a fly fisherman and tied my own flies, and that if there was any way she could see her way clear to share one of those feathers with me, I could probably tie some pretty mean looking and fish catching flies. Much to my amazement, she took off her hat, broke off a feather, and gave it to me. I still have a couple of flies that I tied with that feather. They ain't pretty, but I did manage to catch a few fish with them the next summer. And that's my story of how I got interested in both fly fishing and fly tying. So much for stories. This first photo is a pair of bodkins, well, not new. It's an example of an important refinement of the tool. The left one's a fairly standard heavy-duty bodkin. The right one, a very, very fine and flexible one. I was first shown this fine one by Eric a number of years ago. To make them, I used about a 4.5-inch length of cane rod as a handle that, depending on the tool, is either a 1/4 inch or 5/16 of an inch across the flats of the hexagonal cross section. The heavy one is used to poke holes or pull out stuff that needs some strength to it. It's simply a sewing needle that's epoxied into a hole in the end of the cane handle. The thin one is actually a much more versatile tool. You can transfer a tiny, tiny droplet of head cement or nail polish to a exact location on a fly. It is great for sticking into a feather to separate the barbs if you need, you know, a slip that's 4 or 5 barbs wide. It makes it really easy. It works. It's finer and it works better than the tips of a signal of a scissors. Next, Eric. That fine one is made actually from a Griffin dubbing teaser, which is a nasty little tool. It has just incredibly sharp little barbs along the shaft of the pin there, the needle. But they sand off very easy with 400, 600 grit emery paper. And I just use a mat knife to cut the plastic handle off it and glue it in to the end of the handle. Next, dress it up a little bit with a jungle cock eye, and then refinish it using Helmsman spar varnish, thinned down maybe 10% with mineral spirits. I also protect the point and myself by just using a little piece of plastic or a foam tube on the tip of it. Next, I also make brushes. The top one is a wire brush, a brass brush. Actually, it's made from a brush used to clean the barrel of a rifle. The bottom one is a nylon brush, much softer, much more gentle, and that's made from a pipe cleaner brush, or cleaning the inside of a stem of a pipe cleaner. I use a little brass tube to protect the brass bristles, and a little plastic tube for the nylon one. And when I give them away as gifts, I like to put them in a dressed up little box. They can be stored in it, or it's just a nice way to present something. Next. These are a couple of original tools. The one on the left is a shepherd's hook tool. The one on the right is I just call it a paddle point. The shepherd's hook actually came about in having something to bend and form a loop in the silkworm gut used to form the eye on a full dress salmon fly, and it's just the right diameter to form that loop and hold it in place and locate it perfectly when you tie it on to the end of the hook. I also found that it works great for spinning a dubbing loop. If it's a simple one and you want a lot of control over it, and the handle allows you to perfectly place the wraps as you're wrapping a dubbing loop up the shaft. The other tool is something that would take off I learned from Eric. He uses a dental tool when he does his salmon flies as a way to get up between the rear wing and the near wing. Works better than a needle point bodkin because it's flat and it's very easy to get it up and separate things. Go ahead, next one. The next tool is not really a fly tying tool, but it's something I came up with, which on bitter cold days, if you're steelhead fishing, just works great. It's simply a piece of surgical tubing, about 2 inches long. I use a 1/4 inch brass or stainless steel rod. And if you are tying a fly on, and you need to get a grip on it when your hands are cold and wet, and you're using, 2X or 1X tippet, you can cut your hand very easily getting a good tug on it. You just take this tool and wrap the leader material around it about twice. Let it come out between your fingers so that you have sort of a T arrangement, and you can pull a knot just as tight as you ever would want to without suffering pain, seeing any blood on your hands. Next. One of the greatest fears I always had was tipping over a bottle of liquid, head cement, whatever, on my tying desk. Actually did it once, and I said, there's got to be a better way. So I make these, I call them little hockey pucks. They're about 2.5 inches in diameter, and they have an 1/8 inch solid brass base on them. And I can cut any drill or carve any size hole I want in the top of it. Round ones, square ones, or the one on the right is sort of a kidney shape. And the thing to remember here is when the cap is off the bottle, you never take the bottle out of the holder. And it's worked great. I haven't tipped one over since I've been using it. Next. Made a bunch of these over the years. They're hook and bead dishes. Again, something that you can put on your desk. You can put small flies in it as you finish them. I used to use the condiment cups from the fast food places, and they work great. But this just classes it up a little bit. Again, it's made out of curly cherry with a solid brass bottom, and then there's felt on the bottom of the brass. Next, I also do cork displays. Again, a piece of curly cherry with an OG edge on it, and holes drilled to size with corks, and do them in versions of 3 or 5 or 1 cork, and you can set up a display if you want. Eric uses these if he does a fly tying demonstration at fairs or expos for fly fishing. And these are flies that I've tied recently for steelhead that seem to work for me. They're some of my favorite patterns. Next, also do one that's just a single one where you can pick up the cork and turn the fly around and look at it from all sides. Next, this works even better. It's just an alligator clip that's soldered onto a brass rod and has a base which is probably not more than 1.5 inches in diameter. And again, it allows you to hold a fly. As an example, of you got something you're trying to copy or use as a model, you can pick it up and rotate it and look at it from all sides very easily. Next. When I started tying full dress flies, this probably isn't the right picture, but the problem is, what do you do with them after you finish tying them? They're extremely fragile. You don't fish with them, at least Eric and I don't. After spending hours and the cost of the materials, can't just throw them in a drawer. A friend of ours up in Michigan introduced us to these little plastic boxes. They are actually designed and sold to hold baseball cards, and they're a perfect size. They've got 3/16 of an inch space between the front and the back panels, and use a little silicone dot to stick on it. It comes with adhesive on it, and impale the hook on it. And now you have all these things. If you want to display them, I made some bases next that you can stand them up and do show and tell with a fly. There's a label on top of the box that has the name of the fly and the date that it was tied. This is probably my favorite steelhead fly. It's just got a pine squirrel a wing on it, and a mylar tube for the body. It's got a little bit of weight in it, and then a hackle throat, or a marabou throat. And I've had an awful lot of success with steelhead and this fly, and then tie it in with mink and olive and different colors throats. It's been a good fly for me. Next. So now you have all these little display boxes. What do you do with them? I put a bit of Velveeta box. But back about, I won't say how many years ago, for Eric's birthday, I decided I'd build a pair of matching boxes. These are made out of lace wood, and they're sized. The interior is lined with green velvet, and they're sized to the whole 48 of these little plastic box containers. Is a great way to just store really precious flies, and include a brass oval in the lid with the owner's name laser engraved in it, and then down in the bottom of the box in the lower right corner is another little disc that has my initials and the date for the box that the box was made. Next, also do boxes as gifts. I have a fellow that I fish with up in on the Osaba, who had a piece of walnut that was his grandfather's. He was going to make a gun stock out of it and never got around to it. And when he found out I liked to make sawdust, he offered it to me, which I obviously accepted. And in return, built him a box with his name and a little bit of brown trout artwork in the lid. Next. And that's Eric's box again, with his name and his collection of full dress salmon flies. Next. Back 30 years ago, I got into some saltwater patterns that all the rage was flies with epoxy heads. And the problem with epoxy, you had to sit and hold the fly and move it around so that it didn't drip. So came up with a drying wheel, which you can buy commercially. Back then, they were about $70, as I recall. Next, and they come with a foam wheel, which you could buy the wheels separately. And I ended up buying a little 5 RPM synchronous motor off the internet. I think it cost me $3.49 plus another $4 to ship it. I put it in an electrical box, painted it black, and put it on a cherry thing with, again, a brass base on it. Hasn't been used too much since the UV resin became available. I don't know if anybody still makes epoxy headed flies or not, but haven't used it much lately. But 20, 30 years ago, it was a very useful tool. I think that's it. No, it isn't. There's another one. This is clearly not an original idea. In fact, Al, you may have had this as one of your tricks of the trade in some of your articles. But these comb binders that you can buy at Staples or Office Depot, Office Max, real cheap, a 3/4 inch diameter one. And I cut them into 2 tabs and punch an 1/8 inch hole in it. And they are the best thread keepers I've ever used. Way back when, I used to buy different kinds of thread keepers, but these work. They're, so inexpensive. Tinsel, wire, lead, you can bring out through the 1/8 inch hole, and it'll hang just like a bobbin. It doesn't work so well with thread, but because it'll fray the thread. But it's, I've got hundreds of these things now. And I used to store my thread in Ziploc bags and you'd go to get something, it'd all be tangled up. Excuse me, as the thread started to unwind, but these work great. And as I recall, that's about it. Yeah.
Dick, thank you. I have most of these tools, and I can vouch that, and I've used them all. And it's really funny because I've railed against tools for years in various settings and forums, and with the idea that the best tools you own are your 10 fingers, which is true to an extent. But if you're a pro tire, or if you have special needs doing something pretty tough, as your time grows, then you start to need specialty stuff. And Dick has provided me everything I need. um, and then some. Oh, but honestly, I've used every single tool that he's given me, and I think I've got a version of everything except the cold weather knot tool that he had, because I don't fish in cold weather ever. So anyway, Al, you about ready? Al, I think you're mute.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. Dick, I wanted to comment, it was about the second or third slide in. You had those cute little boxes that you put the brush tools inside of, and you had me right there. I just, damn, that was just really cool. That's all I can tell you. I mean, I don't know if really cool is even a good terminology of these days, but you know what I'm talking about. You're old enough to understand what cool was. But anyhow, yes, anything else for you, Eric?
Oh, I can show you my one tool that I can't seem
Please
to
do let me.
fly. I can just put it up here. This is a dental tool. This is the one Dick alluded to, and I've learned more about it. I think I showed this one other time online, but I've learned more about this tool. It's called a WS7, which stands for wax spatula number 7. And to get a good one, and I finally found a place where I could get another good one. To get a good one, you've got to spend $50. You've got to get the stainless steel dental, the true dental one, not the ones sold on Amazon for $6 or $8. I've got a couple of those, and they're terrible. This can double as a burnishing tool. If you don't have a burnishing tool and you want one, I would get a WS7 dental tool. Now, let me say this. The only place that I found where I could actually purchase this thing was on eBay. And through eBay, you don't have to register your dental clinic with the site. But if you look this tool up, a WS7 dental tool, they'll appear, but you can't order them unless you're a dentist. But you can on eBay. So that's how to get around it. But you got to buy the expensive one. I'm sorry. And it's worth every penny. Best tool I've ever had. I just freaking love it. I use it all the time. And I couldn't tell you what is so great about it and what is so valuable about it. I don't like ever picking up a tool if I can help it. I picked that one up a lot. So for whatever that's worth.
Actually, the one that I made starts with a pair of tweezers like stamp collectors use, and I just cut the end off that the sort of canoe paddle shape, and glued it on the end of the handle. And it works great.
But you can't burnish with it.
No, I
You
use
can
agate
with
for
this one.
that. I use some of John's agate.
Yeah, I do too. But I used the Ron Lucas dental tool that I had for probably, I don't know, 10 years as a burnishing tool before I got John's agate. But agate stone is the other thing we use to burnish floss. I have one right here. Look, if you get one this size, that's great. It's just a highly polished stone. And it's just for fancy presentation flies with floss, silk floss. And that's all I got.
Okay, well. Anyway, Dick, I was very impressed with all of your stuff. And I'm not even going to try to compare the tools here. In fact, I have no intention of sharing all the tools that I've accumulated over the years. What I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a walk down memory lane, which, as it turns out, given the amount of time that I've been on this earth along with Dick, that it's going to be a little bit of a look at history as well. And I'm going to start right now with a look at my first vise. And my first vise came with a Hank Roberts fly tying kit when I was 14 years old. Well, that vise looked identical to this one and fell apart, or actually broke, after using it for about a month. It was not the best. It probably wasn't made for what I used it for. I started commercial tying about a month after I learned to tie flies, because all I tied for the first, I don't know, 6-8 years, being a kid on an Iowa farm, was streamers. That's because that's the only thing that got fished of anything at all in the local lakes when you did get to fish. But anyway, that's the vise. Not much, and it wasn't much, but I'll set that aside. But when I broke that first one after a month, my dad said, well, I'll help you out. And he took an old vice grip and welded a post on it. And you can see it's got a post on it. And this is also a replacement. It was one that I lost the one back. I mean, in the years from the time I was 14 until today, it went by the wayside. So I picked this up about 20 years ago and have had it ever since. But it's a replica, shall we say, of the one my dad made for me. And I tied flies on that for years and years. I would stand in his shop, because his shop was for woodworking and for working on farm equipment and whatever else. And there was a big vise that he used for holding stuff to plane and file and everything. And I would stick this in that vise and then stand in front of that vise with this vise and a hook in it and tie flies. That's how I tied for years, just standing up. But anyway, I'll set that guy aside. Then I ran across this one and I said, well, geez, I'll get it. And what I liked about this one is it was obviously homemade, all out of a piece of iron. So I just got it as a replacement for my original one until I actually found the original that I could buy on eBay, which is where I got that first vise. But I'll set that aside. Then I really started going uptown. The Thompson B. I want you to notice something about all the vices that I've shown you up till now, except the one my dad made for me. They all have a defined length as how far they stick up above the tabletop. And anybody who has done any amount of tying, and especially in the commercial tying arena, every one of these is so doggone far up in the air that you're going to have to climb a ladder to tie flies on them. They're just too far up off the edge of the table, at least for the way I tie. I like to keep my hands down more at chest level, not up above at eye level. But anyway, I'll set that one aside. Now we're getting into the primo stuff. I got my first Thompson A, and you could adjust it up and down. And one of the things that I learned early on, I mean, I'd only been tying commercially at that time, probably about 10 years. that I found that if you put a lot of hours into the vise, that being able to move it up and down at different times through the day, that would rest your back a little bit so that your arms would be a little bit lower, a little bit higher, an hour in this position, hour in that position. But that was the old Thompson A, adjustable. I thought I was in heaven. Anyway, then I had to make a trip into rotary. And this is the old Herder's rotary that I got way back when. And I tied on it some. It has not had a lot of wear. You don't see like some of my other vices that are just, they're wore smooth and their black is gone and everything. This one didn't get a lot of use because, quite frankly, I didn't find rotary particularly a great way to tie until I had to many years later, and then I got really good at it. But there it was, a rotary vise of a type you may have not seen, but it was adjustable. It could go up and down, so that was kind of nice. I'll set that one aside. Now we're getting down to the cream of the crop. In 1980, I got this vise. It's an HMH. It was one of the first ones that came out, made by the company. I tied on it until Gretchen and I got married in 93, and we went into the full-time fly fishing, fly tying business. And at that time, this got retired in favor of who was ever hiring me to tie on their vise. That's what it boils down to. And I've tied on a lot of them since then, but nothing beats the old HMH as far as I'm concerned. It is just, it's the cat's meow as far as I'm concerned. Now I wanted to share one other thing with you. Is back in the day when I moved from California to Idaho in the late 70s, I found early on that I did not particularly like dealing with commercial customers through the mail and on the telephone. I like looking a person in the eyeball and collecting dollars that are due and making deliveries on time, that type of stuff. But it took a while to build a customer base in Idaho after I left California. So I still tied a few flies for accounts in California until I got going pretty well in Idaho. I got pretty well established by the real early 80s, 81 and 82. But in 1980, I decided to learn how to tie full dress Atlantic salmon flies. Well, I mean, like everything I've learned all my life, I didn't have any place to go for lessons or anything like that. I bought a Paul Jorgensen book and started tying from it. And the first fly that I tied, I decided to keep it. It's a full dress Atlantic married wing made up thing that I tied out of one of the first flies in that Paul Jorgensen book. And at the time it was called Blue Charm. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Anyway,
the Blue Charm was the first fly in the book. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, anyway, there it is, mounted it the way we did back in those days in this dome. And that's the first and only full dress Atlantic salmon fly that I kept. Now, I've tied a bunch of them since then, but they either got sold or donated to auctions and raffles. But I kept the first one for myself. And as you can see, it's pretty darn rugged. It's far from great. But I did over the years tie one heck of a lot of steelhead flies. And in fact, you'll find 3 steelhead flies in there in that display, all hair-wing steelhead flies that I tied after I moved to Idaho. And they were used for use on the Clearwater River, which is in central Idaho, and into the Columbia system. But anyway, that's the end of my presentation. And now it's your turn. Who has stuff to share with us? Now, don't everybody all speak up at once. Eric's out onto a limb. What?
Al, it's Fred.
Yes, Fred. Okay, Fred, let me spotlight you.
Sure.
Okay. There you go, Fred.
I've been using this a lot. It's a caliper, and it's a digital caliper, and it's literally made out of plastic. But it's accurate enough to do pretty good measuring of liters of beads, of tippets, of lead. Anytime, well, I might have a spool of lead that the little markings on the ends fell off, and I don't know what in the heck the diameter is. This will tell you it's in millimeters and in inches, and I got this on I think TEMU for $2.43 plus $3.50 shipping. Actually, I bought 6 of them and gave them out to some of my fly tying students. So, and they use them a lot. That's it.
Oh, that's
really cool.
I can see some uses for
I have
that.
to get one of those.
Anybody else?
I'll share something, Al. This is Jim Moss.
Okay, let me spotlight you.
And so I'll apologize if I stole this from somebody else in one of your other classes, Al, or presentations, but it's something I've gotten to the point where I can't live without now. And so I always had a trouble with the bodkins that you buy or come in kits with being too thin and not hefty enough. And so out on Amazon, they sell what they call, I think, metal toothpicks, if you can see that.
Yep.
And they come in 3 to a package, and I think they're about $8 or $9. And so they come like this. And you can see there's sort of a knurled end at one side, and the other end there's a little hole for a split ring. And so one of the things I found really valuable about this, if you put the split ring in the hole that comes with the toothpick, it won't roll on your desk anymore. So you don't have the problem like some bodkins do where they roll off and stick in your foot, or you have to hunt for them on the floor, that type of thing. So I love that. And then if you unscrew it, the toothpick part is in the center of this, and you just take it out and screw the 2 pieces together, and you've now got a bodkin. And what I really like about it, it might be hard to see here, but if you look at, it's got a really, really fine tip, but as you go back toward the main body, you know, it grows significantly. So there's quite a bit of heft in this toothpick or bodkin when it gets all that I really like. It's not a flimsy type bodkin at all. It's pretty strong and powerful at the far end there. So I just love it.
Cool.
Love that. That is cool. Anybody else?
I got something, Al.
Okay, just let me spotlight you, Lou. Okay.
Yeah, years ago, I used to do some of the wing burning, but my wife didn't like the smell in the house. So she bought me, I don't know if you can read this, but it's the wing cutter.
Yep, I've seen those.
Yeah, and it's from, it's a Yorkshire wing cutter, and it's from England, and it's got a fancy handle. It's got this plastic piece in there, and if you look inside, there's the size of what you cut. And it states that it's made from the finest Sheffield steel. And it even gives you something to push down on because they don't want you to ruin the blade. And it's just something that I used for years, and it's a tool I forgot about because I haven't done it in a while. So
Lou, I've got a set of those.
You do?
I do.
Yeah. And there's one other tool. I don't know if you can see this or not. It was put up by Marriott's down there in California, Bob Marriott's store.
Yeah, Fullerton.
Yeah. Well, this is for CDC. I've been working with CDC since the 88 or 89. And it's you roll the CDC feather, and there's got 3 needles here. And you slide this bar back and forth and open it up, and you put the CDC feather in, and then you roll it, and the feathers go out to the side. Then you slide it off, grab the bunch, break it off, and tie it on. Now we got the clips and everything, but this was the way they did it back then. So it's
Oh.
something a little bit different.
How cool.
That's neat.
And I've had everything so far up until now. Now I got a new toy to go looking for.
So,
I think
the
They still
forerunner
sell-
to the magic tool then, kind of?
Yeah,
Could be.
I still have my 59-cent, chip bag stuff too, but it was just something that was new on the market and I just had to try it. This is going back quite a long time. So it's just, working with CDC, it was different back then. So I just wanted to have this tool.
Hey, appreciate it, Lou. Anything else?
That's it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Al, I got one real quick.
Okay, here you are. Okay, let me spotlight you, John. Okay, go for it.
This is just the beginning. I just got these the other day, but I don't know if we're going to be able to see this or not. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What that is that's a blowgun dart. And it's real thin,
Okay, I got that. I can even, okay,
very,
got
very
it.
sharp. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it in a piece of bamboo rod blank that I've got. I'll take a little sharpness off of the blade, and this is a great device for putting UV on the heads of flies.
Oh, you're gonna have to demonstrate that for us.
Well, I'm not ready to do that quite yet, but yeah, we'll do
Well,
that.
it-
I'll tell you what, I got to get it built yet. So when
Well,
I get
we're
it built,
winding,
I'll show you.
we're winding up Fly Tying Friday in 2 weeks. So let's look for doing something in the fall.
Okay, works for me.
Awesome. Anything else, John?
Not today. That's it for me, Al. Thank you.
Oh, okay. We're back to the rest of you.
Oh, this is what I was hoping for when we came up with
Yes.
this tool.
David
thing.
Buckner, if you don't raise your hand, I'm gonna get really excited with you.
I got
Okay,
a
I'm
couple.
spotlighting David, but just a minute, David, let me spotlight you. There you go.
We talked last week about the eyes, dotting eyes, the paint eyes, and those are dowels with cut off crochet needles, different sizes. One of the guys in the club also found these at the dollar store, and they're actually made for dotting jewelry. For
For
jewelry
dotting
making.
what? For dotting what?
For making jewelry.
Oh, I'll be
Wow.
darned.
And same concept, but I've got a real unusual one here for you. That's my furling spinner. That is a nose hair trimmer. How about that?
Oh, Jesus, I forgot. Yeah.
I use cut off nails for putting dots on them. just put nails in the end of a dowel stick and cut them off, different size nails, and they work great.
Anything else, David? Okay, let's anybody else? Now, Barry, I'm disappointed you're not showing us anything because it's one of your tips, this one in Fly Tire Magazine very recently, and that was using the sticky side of Post-it notes. But obviously you've got some kind of tools around there. You don't just use Post-it notes for everything.
Yeah, the only thing I've got that is kind of the counterpart to the one that Jim Moss showed, and this has got an insect specimen pen mounted in it. And so it's very, very fine. You can order those in whatever size you want. And you can tell it's really, really small and very flexible. And you can really get in and do really fine work with it.
That's
Insect
awesome.
specimen.
I got some of those too. John Wright sent me the pins. I just have to make them into the bodkins now. Anybody else? Well, I have one more thing because David Buckner brought it up. And I got this from Gary Borger back when, and I forget the name of the store, but they sell a coffee frother machine that makes, if you take the frother part off and put a hook on it, it's got this little switch on it, and it's a great, that's spinning around and around and around right now.
Yeah, we'd say it.
Yeah, Al,
And
Al, that
you know
thing
what
is,
that's for? That's for a dubbing loop, but it's only got one problem. If you don't slow it down in time, it will break it in nothing flat. So that's all.
Al, that is bought in IKEA.
That's it, IKEA. That's it.
Yeah, and to slow that down, Al, instead of having two batteries in it, just put one battery.
Oh, thank you. I
It
can
cuts the
I can
speed
use it
down.
because I just been using it as a chuckle because there was no way I could
No,
slow
no.
it down quick enough to stop the loop from not breaking.
No, Gary, I was tying with Gary and he showed me that thing and he said, all you do is put one battery in there and you slow it down. So
Okay, well, I'll be working on that.
okay, okay.
This isn't the time to do that. Anyhow, anything else? Well, this has been a fun one as far as I'm concerned. We will be wrapping it up for the season. Let me get it side by side with Eric and myself. And Eric. Okay, as I say, this is the end of the season for us. We'll probably start up again sometime in the fall or in winter, whenever the mood strikes us. I don't know. What do you think about that, Eric?
I think it's going to be great. I definitely need to recharge personally, and it was David Buckner contacted me recently asking about the gut snood, and that started me on a quest yesterday. I spent the day researching the gut snood and the double gut snood, which are
Will you help
antiquated
me?
terms for snelled hooks and leaders, basically.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, well, it was a thing. It was definitely a thing. Actually, it's in Francis. I found references to it, which is mid 1800s over in England. So it started there, but there's a lot of references to it in the Catskills. Thaddeus Norris, for instance, talks about the gut snood. And I finally found the double gut snood in Mary Orvis Marbury, favorite flies and histories. So it's a thing. I don't quite know exactly at this point how to tie it. I think a single snood, you just, those were blind eye hooks back then. So you just wrap thread around, you just run at the length of the hook basically and wrap thread, and that keeps it on the hook. But the double gut snood has interested me for a long time. And some other things that I see in Mary Orvis Marbury where there's some red whipping on a leader. And I've always wondered about that. So anyway, now I have time to do all these completely pointless things that I'm really into. So that's
I've got a couple of things on my schedule for the summer besides the normal programs that we do. And that is, I want to really explore what Video Ninja will do for OBS, which all of you don't have a clue what that is, but it has to do with Zoom studios and how you can add people from other areas into a Zoom studio. And my goal is to add my buddy Paul on the water. And Paul lives in Port Macquarie, Australia, and have him on a side-by-side, just like Eric and I are right now, except he'd be on some water in Australia and I'd be at my Zoom studio here in in Idaho, controlling everything here from Idaho. That's the one goal. And the other goal is Gretchen, in fly tying, there's only one thing that I can't do that Gretchen can, and that's tie on the treadle sewing machine rotary vise of her dad's. And if I can get the time worked in, I'm going to learn how to tie on that blasted thing come hell or high water so that I can demonstrate it before the whole concept dies. Because if you go in and look for treadle sewing machine rotary vise on YouTube, you won't find anything on it. I think the last person that I saw way back in the day, let's see, this would be after I first moved to Idaho. So it was in call it the early 80s. It was somewhere in there. But I discovered Pat and Sig Barnes in West Yellowstone. And it was a 10-hour and 30-minute drive for me from Sandpoint, Idaho to West Yellowstone, Montana. And I used to go down there whenever I would get a long weekend with my job. And there's a place inside Yellowstone Park called the Barnes Hole. And I always had a great time fishing the Barnes Hole, but it was more or less an evening fishery. So I would go down to West Yellowstone, sleep in my truck in the parking lot at Pat Barnes' fly shop, spend the day watching Sig Barnes tie on a treadle sewing machine that she had converted into a rotary vise because she did almost all the tying for their fly shop. And then I would go fish the Barnes Hole in the evening and go sleep in the parking lot and do it all over the next day and then drive 10.5 hours home the next. But I can't tell you how many times I did that. I was just intrigued by that, not knowing that I would end up married to a person whose father had a bunch of those and a group of ladies working for him, tying flies commercially back in they started in the 20s, but her father started in the mid-30s all on through until the mid-50s is when he kind of stopped tying commercial with those. But anyhow, those are my goals.
Al, we've got a question from Aaron. Last week you talked about dyeing feathers. When you dye hair, how do you handle the drying of the hair hide? How do you dry hair after dyeing? I always have problems with the hide curling and being a pain when drying. And I haven't dyed hair, so, and hopefully you have.
I have. I've dyed a lot of it, and what you do is you while wet, you stretch it, and that means you're going to have some trim to get rid of. But actually, the trim is good stuff. It's just not the kind of. It won't look good in a fly shop hanging in a 3x5 bag with a $5 price tag on it. So you have to get rid of that stuff, but you take it while it's wet and stretch it. And I usually just stretched it with a few nails on a piece of board. Hide side out, hair side up against the board, tack her down. I've even first time I dyed hair, I was still working on the ranch, and one of the horse stalls had a good place to tack it up, and I would just take a few nails and dye it, tack it up on the side of the barn and leave it there for a few days and then pull it down and trim around the edges and go from there. But so you're right, Aaron, it curls up unless you stretch it.
John is showing something. John
Okay,
Wright,
that's John Wright.
yeah.
Let's unspotlight us here real quick. Remove spotlight, and Eric, I'll remove your spotlight. And John, okay, John, just a minute. Spotlight for everyone. Okay, hide tanning. Oh, you've done it. All right.
Yeah,
Good
I
man.
got this hit from Jason Varner up in down south. He does a lot of hides, and you pick this up at Cabela's of all places. But
Yep.
when it's wet and after you've stretched it all out, like Al said, you can put some of this on it, and that'll keep it relatively supple.
Yep. Yeah, we used to also, back in my rawhide braiding days, I would remove the hair and stretch the hide too. And what you usually end up doing is rubbing tallow after it's dried, you rub tallow into the flesh side of the hide to kind of soften it a bit, preparing it for stripping into strings to braid rawhide. And that's not anything we're dealing with here, except I did take one of our books and we wrote about weaving hair, and I took some rawhide braiding principles and put them on some fish hooks. I mean, but that's the sum total. But anything else going here, folks? Well, let me get a wrap captured on film so I don't have to do a bunch of crazy editing later. I'll just spotlight myself, we'll do a wrap, and then we'll just close up for the day. And that's it for this week and for this season. For now, it's a wrap until next time. See ya.